There is no more urgent consideration before this parliament than the safety and security of Australia and its people. It is the first responsibility of this parliament, and it's not something we can afford to kick down the road. People who left Australia to join the depraved ISIS terrorist cult have been allowed to return, and this Labor government has actively helped them despite saying it would not. These people represent a direct threat to the safety of Australians and the security of this nation. There are more of them. 13 men linked to ISIS and currently held in a Baghdad prison may soon be released. They may seek to return to Australia as well. They include Tariq Kamla, also known as Dr. Jihad.
Senator, there's a point of order. Please take your seat. Minister.
Debate on the suspension, not on the substantive. So I'm just asking you to bring Senator Hanson back to the argument, which is about why this should be urgent to be debated.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Hanson, please do bring it back to that point.
Well, I believe that I am. These, also known as Dr. Jihad, who appeared in ISIS propaganda and called for Muslims everywhere to join ISIS or conduct jihad everywhere. The Minister for Home Affairs has said the law leaves him with no other option than to permit the return of these people despite the threat they pose. That's why it is urgent for the Senate to bring the Protecting Australians from Foreign Terrorist Fighters Bill to debate immediately. If the law does not currently prevent these people from returning, our duty to the Australian people is to change the law. One nation is acting where the Labor government has failed to act. The bill creates a new Foreign Terrorist Fighter Exclusion Order. This is in addition to the existing Temporary Exclusion Order regime. The new order allows the minister to go to the federal court and establish that the person poses an unacceptable risk.
Can you please really focus in on the urgency component of this?
Explain the urgency, why this is needed. That is quite clear in why the bill needs to be introduced into the chamber.
Speak to the urgency, not the substantive.
No, I'm sorry. If the Labor Party doesn't like what I'm reading out here, really telling the people why we desperately need this, then they have the problem with this.
I'm the chair, and I'm asking you to keep it to the urgency component of the suspension, please.
Well, the urgency is that it needs to go to the courts. The bill needs to be introduced so it can go to the courts to keep these people out of the country. So that is the urgency of this motion.
Please continue, but as I reiterated on the urgency component.
In addition to the existing Temporary Exclusion Order regime, the new order, which is urgent, allows the minister to go to the federal court and establish that the person poses an unacceptable risk based on the advice of security agencies. It is measured and it is robust. Judicial oversight is maintained. It also strengthens terrorism bail laws and passport powers and imposes serious penalties on people who unlawfully facilitate the return of terrorist fighters. One nation strongly believes that every possible legal measure must be employed to prevent the return of terrorists to our shores. We must take all possible steps to ensure the safety of Australians. Labor's approach to this issue has been to hide behind advice about constitutional questions. This is why the urgency is. The government should table this advice instead of keeping Australians in the dark and stop using it as a convenient excuse for failing to act. I say let the High Court determine whether a law is constitutional because that is its job. We can't excuse me. We can't afford to sit on our hands and wait. Labor has stood by while two ISIS-linked women on serious charges were released into the community on bail. Labor has said they won't assist the return of these 13 men imprisoned in Baghdad, but that's what they said about the so-called ISIS brides they helped to return. Labor can redeem itself by allowing this debate and supporting One Nation's legislation. The safety and security of the Australian people demand no less. We should act before these men are released. We must put in place every possible barrier to prevent their return. One Nation has done its part by drafting this bill to protect Australians. We ask that the Senate suspend standing orders to debate our bill and put the safety of Australians first, and that's a matter of urgency.
Quick favour. If you are the kind of person who loves Australia and loves to be up to date on what is going on in our country's politics, hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep this channel going. Over 90% of viewers have not yet, and it would mean the world to us if you did. Thank you. Now, back to the show. 13 Australian men who fought for ISIS are sitting in a Baghdad prison right now, and any day the gates could open and send them straight back to us. One of them, Tariq Kamle, was so deep in the propaganda machine they nicknamed him Dr. Jihad. He did not just appear in ISIS videos, he called for a global holy war. And when Pauline Hanson stood up in the Senate and demanded we do something before these men land on our shores, what did Labor and the Greens do? They voted against even debating the issue. Let that sink in. 13 self-declared enemies of this country, and the government's first instinct is to protect its own timetable. This is the Foreign Terrorist Fighters Bill, not exactly a crowd-pleasing name, but the stakes could not be higher. One Nation wants to create a foreign terrorist fighter exclusion order, a legal mechanism that lets the Home Affairs Minister go before the federal court, lay out the intelligence and block a known threat from ever stepping foot back in Australia. And before the skeptics reach for their pitchforks, read the fine print. This is not a minister waving a magic wand. A judge has to sign off on it. The intelligence and security agencies supply the evidence. It's executive power wrapped in judicial oversight, which is exactly how these powers are supposed to work in a country that still calls itself a democracy. Now, you would think stopping ISIS fighters from coming home is the one thing both sides of politics could agree on. You would be wrong, because the same government that promised Australians it would not help the so-called ISIS brides promptly let them come back anyway. And as if that wasn't enough, 2 ISIS-linked women facing serious charges were released on bail straight back into the community. So spare us the lecture about how careful Labor's being. The pattern is not caution, it's chaos dressed up as compassion. And here's the kicker. When asked why they can't move faster, the government hides behind confidential constitutional advice. Don't worry, they tell us, the lawyers are on it. Meanwhile, the High Court exists precisely to decide whether a law is constitutional. You don't sit on a national security emergency because you're waiting for a memo nobody's allowed to read. That's not governance. That's evasion with a smile. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you believe our safety should come before political convenience. It genuinely helps us keep these stories coming.
Here is the uncomfortable truth. We cannot afford to sit on our hands while 13 ISIS-linked Australians inch toward release. Every day of procedural delay is a day we bet the safety of Australian families on the hope that nothing goes wrong. That is a bet we keep losing. One Nation is asking for one thing: a vote, a debate, a decision. If the High Court later strikes the law down, so be it. That is the system working. But refusing to even try because the politics is awkward is not caution, it is cowardice. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.